She said, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. You're my favorite person, just not the one. I wiped my hands, replied, got it, then closed the drawer hiding the ring and split every bill down the middle. Weeks later, one drunk friend told me why she let me set the scene. It was a quiet Sunday evening, the kind where the air feels heavier than usual. The kitchen light hummed above us, throwing soft shadows across the counter. I was making dinner, her favorite, a garlic butter pasta she'd once said made her believe in love again. The irony still stings when I think about it. She sat across from me, legs folded up on the chair, scrolling through her phone like the world existed in that screen. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last meal we ever shared as us. When she finally looked up, her eyes weren't soft like they used to be. They were almost sorry, not for what she was about to say, but because she knew I wouldn't see it coming. Then came the line that split my world in half. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. You're my favorite person, just not the one. I froze. The pasta boiled over. Somewhere between the hiss of the pot and the silence that followed, something inside me shut off. I wiped my hands on the towel, looked at her once more and said, got it. No fight, no begging, no scene. Just two words. Quiet, controlled, final. I turned, walked to the bedroom, opened the drawer, and looked at the ring I'd bought 2 weeks ago. Simple, elegant, gold with a small emerald. Her birthstone. I'd been waiting for the right weekend to ask her, but instead I just closed that drawer, locked it, and felt something colder than heartbreak settle in. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to her breathing next to me, thinking about how strange it is to share a bed with someone who's already left you in their heart. And by morning I decided, if she was done pretending, so was I. Every bill, every dinner, every plan, we split it down the middle. No arguments, no emotion. I wanted her to feel the line I'd drawn, and she did. But the thing about silence is, it echoes. The house that used to feel warm now felt like an empty hotel room. Her laughter that once filled the walls was replaced by the sound of notifications and shallow conversations with people I didn't know. I wasn't angry. I was just numb. And that numbness somehow hurt worse than rage ever could. Before I go deeper, let me pause here for a second. If you've ever had a moment like this, where someone looked at you and said something that broke you quietly, tell me where you're from and hit that like button. I want to know how far stories like this travel, how heartbreak sounds in your language. All right, back to it. 2 weeks passed. We lived together, but like strangers with assigned rooms. She'd leave earlier than usual, come back later than she used to. I stopped asking where she went, not because I didn't care, but because I knew the answer would only hurt. Sometimes she'd hum while showering, and I'd recognize the tune. It was a song we used to dance to. Now it sounded like a memory mocking me. The first real crack came one night when her phone lit up across the table. I wasn't snooping, but when a message preview flashes, it's hard not to see. It read, he doesn't suspect a thing. I didn't react. I just stared at those 6 words until the screen dimmed. I'd learned long ago that if you act too soon, you lose control. So I waited. Days passed and she acted normal. Maybe a little too normal. Overly polite, overly cheerful, overly fake. So I played along. I smiled when she spoke, laughed when she joked, even kissed her goodnight once or twice just to keep the balance. Because if she was playing chess, I was willing to play too, but I wasn't going to lose. One Friday night, she said she was going out with her friends from work. She even dressed like she wanted to be noticed. Red lipstick, curled hair, a dress she hadn't worn in months. I nodded, handed her the keys and said, have fun. She smiled, relieved that I didn't ask questions. But I had one question that needed an answer. So I texted her best friend Leah, the one who'd always been too honest when drunk, too defensive when sober. I asked her, hey, is everyone from work going out tonight? There was a pause, then 3 dots, then nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I didn't go looking for proof. I didn't check her location or scroll through her phone. I just waited, Because the truth always shows up when people get comfortable lying. And it did. 3 weeks after she left, after the last "I'll always care about you" text, after the tears that didn't mean anything, I was out with some friends, and one of them, half drunk and too talkative, looked at me and said, "You know why she really left, right?" I didn't answer. I just took a sip of my drink. He leaned closer, lowered his voice. "She'd been seeing someone from her gym. Started months before you bought the ring. Guess she didn't expect you to find out." And there it was. The thing that makes your stomach twist and your chest go hollow. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it finally made sense. The long drives alone, the sudden gym obsession, the just tired excuses. Everything clicked into place like a puzzle I never wanted to finish. I didn't confront her. What would be the point? She'd already rewritten the story in her mind. She wasn't the villain, just someone who fell out of love. But here's the truth. People don't fall out of love. They fade out because they've already fallen somewhere else. The next morning, I opened that same drawer, the one where I'd hidden the ring, and took it out. I stared at it for a long time, not thinking of her, but of myself. Because that ring wasn't just a proposal. It was everything I'd built for someone who never planned to stay. So I drove to the beach, her favorite spot, and threw it into the water. Not out of anger, but as a way to say goodbye to the version of me that believed she was my forever. The waves swallowed it, and I swear it felt like the ocean exhaled for me. And that's when it hit me. Closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. A month later, I saw her again, in a cafe downtown. She was with him. He looked nothing like me. Louder, flashier, a guy who probably never cooked a meal in his life. She saw me too. Her smile faltered, just for a second. I gave her a small nod, not out of bitterness, but as if to say, "You chose your story. I've moved on to mine." And that moment, that single quiet nod, felt better than any revenge ever could. Because the best revenge isn't anger. It's peace. It's walking away knowing you gave everything, and they gave nothing. And still, somehow, you turned out stronger. And maybe one day, when the charm fades and the truth catches up, she'll remember the night I said got it and closed that drawer. Because that's when I stopped being hers and started being mine. They say heartbreak is like grief. You don't move past it, you just learn to carry it differently. And for a while I carried mine like a scar under a shirt, invisible to everyone, but burning whenever someone touched too close. After that night at the cafe, I didn't cry. I didn't break things or drown myself in whiskey. I just existed, quietly. The mornings were the hardest. That slow realization that there's no good morning text waiting, no familiar laugh echoing from the kitchen. Just silence. But silence, when you sit in it long enough, starts to teach you things. It teaches you who you are without the noise of someone else's presence. I started to rebuild my routine, piece by piece, hour by hour. I'd wake up early, go for a run, even when I didn't feel like it. I'd cook breakfast for one and actually eat it instead of pretending I wasn't hungry. I started taking photos again, something I used to love before I started living my life around hers. And that's when I realized something powerful. I hadn't lost her. I just stopped losing myself for her. See, love shouldn't require you to shrink. It shouldn't make you feel like you're auditioning every day just to stay chosen. But I had been, without even realizing it. I remember one evening, weeks later, sitting at a small cafe by myself. The same kind of place we used to go together, except now I was alone, and okay with it. The waiter asked, "Just one?" And I smiled. "Yeah, just me." Those two words, just me, used to sound sad. That night, they sounded free. One day I ran into Leah again, her best friend. She looked different, nervous even. She told me she'd stopped talking to her after everything went down. "I never told you this," she said, "but she used to talk about how calm you were. How no matter what, you never made her feel unsafe. She said you were the kind of person she knew she'd regret losing." I didn't say anything. I just smiled and thanked her. Because regret was her burden to carry now, not mine. But what struck me most wasn't the words. It was realizing that people always understand the value of peace after they destroy it. It's strange how love fades quietly, but healing arrives loudly. It doesn't come as a grand moment. It comes as small wins, like when you finally stop checking their profile, or when a song that once hurt becomes just another tune. Months passed. I moved apartments, got a new job, changed my haircut, not because I wanted to look different, but because I finally felt different. Then one evening, while cleaning up, I found an old box. Letters, photos, ticket stubs, little fragments of a life that once felt unbreakable. I sat there, holding one of her notes. "You make me feel safe." For a second, I felt that old ache again. But instead of pain, I smiled. Because for once, I didn't want to go back. You see, that's the real closure. Not when the pain stops, but when the memory no longer asks you to rewind. A few weeks later, I went out with some friends. We laughed, talked about nonsense, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about her. I was present. Then out of nowhere, a song played. The same one she and I once danced to in the living room, barefoot and half drunk. Everyone was singing along, but I just leaned back and listened. And it didn't hurt, not even a little. That's when I knew I'd finally let her go. Months turned into a year. Life moved forward. I started traveling, not to escape, but to experience. I went to places we'd once planned to go someday, except this time I went alone. I took pictures, met strangers, laughed with people who didn't know my story, and that anonymity felt like oxygen. Every city taught me something. In Istanbul, I learned that loneliness isn't a punishment, it's a pause. In Rome, I realized love isn't rare. Honesty is. And in Tokyo, I understood that sometimes the person you needed to love the most was the one in the mirror. Then one night, I got a message from her. It was short, simple. "I saw your photos. You look happy. I'm glad you're doing well." No apology, no explanation, just words. Safe, distant, meaningless. And I stared at that message for a long time before replying with one word. "Thanks." Because that's all there was left to say. She wasn't a villain, just someone who wasn't meant to stay. And maybe in some quiet corner of her heart, she knew that leaving was the only way I'd ever find myself again. Now, when I look back, I don't see the pain. I see the lessons. That love without honesty is just comfort. That peace costs more than passion. And that sometimes losing someone is how you win yourself back. There's this thing people never tell you about heartbreak. It doesn't just end love. It resets your entire understanding of it. It teaches you boundaries. It teaches you patience. And most of all, it teaches you that being the favorite person isn't the same as being the one. A few months ago, I met someone new. She doesn't remind me of her, and that's what makes it different. She doesn't fill the silence with words. She makes it peaceful. She doesn't ask me to change. She meets me where I am. And maybe that's the point. You go through the wrong ones so you finally recognize the right one. When I told her my story, she didn't pity me. She just said, "Sometimes the 'I love you, but I'm not in love with you' moment isn't the ending. It's the beginning of who you were meant to be." And I think she's right. If you've ever been through something like this, if you've ever had to smile through a goodbye that didn't make sense, or walk away from someone you thought was forever, I hope you remember this. You don't heal when you forget them. You heal when you stop needing them to be sorry. So to anyone sitting in that silence right now, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, you will. It won't happen overnight, and it won't happen the same way it broke. But one morning, you'll wake up, and the air won't feel heavy anymore. You'll catch yourself humming again. You'll laugh without guilt, and you'll realize it's finally over. Not because they stopped mattering, but because you started mattering more. Love isn't always forever. Sometimes it's just a bridge that gets you to yourself. And when you finally cross it, you'll see the view on the other side is worth every scar it took to get there. So to her, thank you for breaking what needed to be broken, for leaving when I didn't have the courage to ask you to. Because you didn't just end our story, you started mine. If this story hits something in you, tell me in the comments how it felt. What part reminded you of your own story? Your feedback helps us create stories that connect deeper, hit harder, and feel real, just like this one. And if you made it this far, wherever you're watching from, thank you. You're not alone. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can ever say after heartbreak is exactly what I said that night. Got it.